Snowbound with the Enemy by Riley Fox. Copyright 2025 by Riley Fox. All rights reserved. No part of this book may be reproduced in any form or by any electronic or mechanical means, including information storage and retrieval systems, without written permission from the author, except for the use of brief quotations in a book review. Formatted with vellum. Chapter 1. Owen. The Art of Unhappy Accidents. If the universe had a branding guide, Owen Fitzwilliam was fairly certain the current mood board was titled Spiteful Monochrome. Everywhere he looked, the world was an aggressive, high-contrast nightmare of white snow and black tree trunks. There was no nuance, no grayscale, just wind that felt like it was composed entirely of tiny, frozen razor blades and a silence so profound it made his ears ring. Owen adjusted his grip on the weekender bag, the leather handle biting into his gloved palm. He took another step toward the cabin, and his foot, clad in a boot that had cost $600 and was designed for Milanese cobblestones, not Cascade slush, sank 6 inches into the powder. "Perfect," he muttered, the words snatched away by the wind before it could even freeze in the air. Just texturally perfect. He reached the porch steps, panting slightly. He was lean, but it was the leanness of someone who subsisted on espresso and anxiety, not cardiovascular excellence. He'd spent the last 3 weeks staring at a screen in a Seattle high-rise, watching his career implode in slow motion. He didn't have the lung capacity for nature. Whispering Pine Cabin loomed above him, a rustic monstrosity of logs and stone that looked exactly like the photos on the rental site. It was quaint. It was secluded. It was supposed to be his sanctuary for 5 days of solitary confinement, where he could drink Glenfiddich until he couldn't remember the look on his creative director's face when he said Owen's work had become derivative. Owen reached into his coat pocket, black wool tailored, completely insufficient for the temperature, and fished out the brass key he'd picked up from the lockbox at the desolate service road entrance 3 miles back. He held it like a holy relic. Inside that door was warmth. Inside was a bottle of single malt. Inside was a complete lack of other human beings. He jammed the key into the lock, prepared to wrestle with the mechanism, but the knob turned under his hand before the key even seated. It was unlocked. Owen froze. His first thought wasn't serial killer, because serial killers were generally inefficient and messy. His first thought was property management incompetence. If the cleaning crew had left the place unsecured, he was going to draft a strongly worded email that would make the recipient cry. He kicked the snow off his boots against the doorframe, a futile gesture, and shoved the heavy wood door open. He had braced himself for the smell of stale air and dust. Instead, he was violently assaulted by the scent of aggressive cinnamon and burning pine. And sound. Mariah Carey was not just playing. She was performing an auditory exorcism at 90 decibels. All I Want for Christmas Is You vibrated through the floorboards, bouncing off the exposed beams and drilling directly into Owen's migraine. Owen stood in the doorway, letting the cold wind swirl around his ankles, blinking behind his fogged-up glasses. The cabin was warm, disgustingly warm. The main room was an open-concept explosion of rustic kitsch, centered around a massive stone fireplace where a fire was already roaring, with an enthusiasm that felt personally mocking. But it was the figure in the kitchen that made Owen's brain short-circuit. A man was standing by the butcher block island. He was tall, broad in a way that suggested he lifted heavy things for fun, and he was wearing a red and black flannel shirt that looked like it had been issued by the Department of Lumberjack Stereotypes. The man was currently shaking his hips in a rhythm that could only be described as unencumbered joy while unpacking a wooden crate of groceries. Owen watched, horrified, as the stranger pulled out a bag of artisanal marshmallows, did a little spin, and tossed them onto the counter. He had thick, dark hair that curled slightly at the collar, and when he turned around to grab a carton of eggs, he spotted Owen. The music cut out instantly as the stranger slapped his hand against a portable speaker sitting on the counter. Silence crashed back into the room, heavy and awkward. The stranger didn't look terrified. He didn't look apologetic. He looked delighted. Oh, hey. The man's voice was warm, a rich baritone that seemed to vibrate in the timber walls. He flashed a smile that was blindingly white and crinkled the corners of his dark eyes. You made it. I wasn't sure anyone would be coming up in this weather. The road's getting pretty gnarly. He wiped his hands on a tea towel and started walking toward the door. Every movement was loose, easy, athletic. He looked like the kind of person who woke up before his alarm and drank green juice. Owen hated him instantly. I put some cider on the stove about 20 minutes ago, the man continued, gesturing vaguely with the towel. Figured the maintenance crew would need a thaw. You guys are lifesavers, seriously. That pilot light in the water heater was looking a little twitchy. Owen stood perfectly still. His brain was trying to process the data. Maintenance crew, cider, twitchy pilot light. He slowly lowered his bag to the floor. Owen said, his voice dry and sharp as cut glass, am not the maintenance crew. The man stopped a few feet away. Up close, he was even more aesthetically offensive. He had warm brown skin that looked like it held a permanent tan, and there was a dusting of silver at his temples that gave him a distinguished look he absolutely didn't deserve. He smelled like wood smoke and expensive wool. The stranger blinked, his smile losing a fraction of its wattage, replaced by a confused tilt of the head. Oh, delivery service? Isn't it a little late for— I am the tenant, Owen interrupted, unbuttoning his coat with trembling fingers. I rented this cabin, for the week, alone. The man's eyebrows shot up. The tenant. No, that's not right. I'm the tenant. He pointed a thumb at his own chest, which was disturbingly broad under the flannel. My family owns the place, actually, but I booked the week through the agency to block it out for repairs and prep. Jasper Cordova. He extended a hand. His palm was calloused, his nails short and clean. Owen stared at the hand like it was a weapon. Owen Fitzwilliam, and I have a confirmation number. Jasper retracted his hand, rubbing the back of his neck. The confusion was deepening into concern. Okay, Owen, look, I'm sure there's been a mix-up. The reservation system has been a little glitchy since they migrated the server. Do you have your email? Do I have my email? Owen repeated flatly. I have a PDF, a calendar invite, and a receipt for the deposit. He whipped his phone out of his inner pocket. His fingers were stiff from the cold, but muscle memory took over. He pulled up the document, zoomed in on the dates, and thrust the screen toward Jasper's face. December 20th through December 27th, Owen recited. Confirmed 3 months ago, paid in full, non-refundable. Jasper squinted at the screen, then pulled out his own phone, kept in the back pocket of jeans that fit him entirely too well. He tapped a few times, humming a low, discordant note. Right, Jasper said, turning his screen around. And here is my confirmation. Owner blockout. Confirmed yesterday. Owen looked. The dates were identical. The confirmation codes were different. They double-booked, Owen whispered. The realization hit him with the force of a physical blow. They let you book a last-minute special over an existing reservation? Looks like it, Jasper said, wincing. He looked genuinely apologetic, which somehow made it worse. Manage Your Mountain Rentals usually catches this stuff. Look, man, I'm really sorry. That sucks. It doesn't suck? Owen snapped, anxiety flaring hot in his chest. It is a catastrophe. I need this cabin. I need silence. He looked around the room, his gaze landing on the offensive pile of groceries, wreaths of greenery, twinkle lights, bags of flour. And I cannot coexist with strictly enforced holiday cheer? Jasper chuckled, a low, rumbling sound. Hey, the cheer is optional. The flour is for sourdough. I am leaving, Owen announced. He grabbed his bag. I am going to drive back to town, find a hotel that smells like bleach and desperation, and I am going to sue this rental agency into the Stone Age. Whoa, hold on, Jasper said, stepping forward. His expression shifted, losing the easy humor and sharpening into something more alert. You might not want to do that right now. Have you looked outside in the last 10 minutes? I just came from outside, Owen said dismissively. It's snowing. That is what mountains do. He turned on his heel, grabbed the handle of the door, and threw it open. He expected a draft. He got a wall. The wind didn't just blow, it screamed. A slurry of white powder blasted into the entryway, instantly coating the floorboards. Owen gasped as the frigid air cut through his layers, sucking the heat from his body in seconds. He squinted toward the driveway. His rental car, a sensible front-wheel drive sedan that the Hertz agent had assured him was fine for light winter travel, was gone. Or rather, it was there, but it had been transformed into a soft, white lump. The wind had sculpted a drift against the driver's side door that was already reaching the window. The tracks he'd made driving in were completely erased, filled in by the dumping snow. Owen took a step out, intending to stomp his way to the vehicle, but the wind slammed the heavy oak door against his hip, nearly knocking him over. The visibility was zero. The trees at the edge of the clearing were just gray ghosts in the whiteout. "Owen!" Jasper's voice was urgent. A hand clamped onto Owen's shoulder, strong, warm, grounding. Jasper hauled him backward, pulling him inside and forcing the door shut against the gale. The latch clicked, and the roar of the storm was muffled instantly, though the windows rattled in their frames. Owen stood dripping on the welcome mat, his heart hammering against his ribs. He was shaking, and he wasn't sure if it was the cold or the adrenaline. "You're not driving anywhere in that," Jasper said. His voice was serious now, devoid of the earlier playfulness. "That's a whiteout. The pass closes when it gets like this. Even if you dug your car out, you'd slide off the road before you hit the main highway." Owen stared at the door. He felt the trap snap shut around him. "So," Owen said, his voice sounding thin to his own ears, "I'm stuck." "We're stuck," Jasper corrected. Owen turned slowly to look at him. Jasper was brushing snow off Owen's shoulder with an easy familiarity that made Owen flinch. "Don't," Owen said, stepping back. Jasper held up his hands in surrender. "Okay, sorry, just trying to help." Owen took off his glasses, wiping the fog and melting snow from the lenses with his scarf. He put them back on and looked at Jasper. Really looked at him. Jasper was a sensory overload. He was too big for the room, too bright, too much. He was a golden retriever in human form, and Owen was a cat who had been declawed and left in the rain. "I need a drink," Owen stated. "I have cider," Jasper offered, the smile creeping back onto his face. "And whiskey." "Keep the cider away from me," Owen said. "But the whiskey, bring the bottle." 30 minutes later, the territorial lines had been drawn. "Okay, let's review the terms of the armistice," Owen said. He was standing in the center of the living room, holding a glass of amber liquid that was arguably the only thing keeping him from curling into a feral ball. He had removed his coat to reveal a black cashmere sweater that cost more than the refrigerator. Jasper was leaning against the stone mantel of the fireplace, looking entirely too comfortable. He'd poured himself a mug of the threatened cider. "I'm listening," Jasper said, his eyes dancing with amusement. "1," Owen said, holding up a finger. "I take the loft. The bed is up there. I have back problems and insomnia, and I paid full price." "Done," Jasper agreed easily. "The pull-out couch isn't bad. I've slept on rocks harder than this mattress." Owen narrowed his eyes. 2, the music. It stops. If I hear one bar of Jingle Bell Rock, I will find that speaker and bury it in the snow. "Harsh," Jasper noted, "but fair. Headphones it is." 3, Owen continued, gesturing a sharp line through the air between the kitchen and the living area. "The workspace. I am setting up on the dining table. It is the only surface with decent ergonomics. Do not put cookies, pine cones, or yarn on my workstation." "Yarn?" Jasper asked. "You look like the type who knits," Owen accused. Jasper blinked, then laughed. "My sister knits. I just supply the moral support, but fine. The table is Switzerland, neutral territory." "And finally," Owen said, taking a sip of the whiskey. It burned pleasantly. "The optimism." Jasper cocked his head. "The what?" "The aggressive optimism," Owen clarified, waving a hand at Jasper's general personage. "The smiling, the bouncing, the general aura of everything is wonderful. I need you to dial it back to a manageable 5 out of 10. I am here to work, and my work requires a certain level of existential dread. Jasper's grin widened, teasing out a dimple in his left cheek that Owen decided to ignore for the sake of his own sanity. Aggressive optimism? That's a new one on my performance review. But hey, I can do brooding. Watch this. He leaned back, crossed his arms, and scowled. It looked less like brooding and more like a puppy trying to understand quantum physics. Terrible, Owen judged, but it will have to do. He turned away, marching toward the dining table to begin the colonization of the space. He unpacked his laptop, sleek, silver, adorned with minimalist stickers, and set it down with geometric precision. Next came the sketchbook, the architectural pens, the noise-canceling headphones. Jasper moved toward the kitchen and the dance of cohabitation began. Owen tried to focus. He really did. He opened his design software, staring at the blank canvas that was supposed to become a portfolio-saving branding package for a boutique coffee roaster. Sleek, he thought. Modern, serif fonts. Scritch, scratch, thump. Owen's eyes flicked up. Jasper was organizing his ski gear in the corner. He was pulling boots out of a bag, checking bindings. The plastic shrieked. The waterproof fabric swished. He was humming again, something soft and unrecognizable but pervasive. Owen gritted his teeth. Focus. Kerning, leading, negative space. Jasper stretched, reaching for a helmet on the top shelf of the coat closet. His flannel shirt rode up. Owen's gaze betrayed him. He watched, helpless, as the red plaid fabric lifted to reveal a strip of skin. Warm, golden brown, intersected by the dark line of hair trailing down from his navel into his jeans. The muscles of his back shifted under the shirt as he reached, a map of functional strength. Owen swallowed. His mouth went dry. It was unfair. It was statistically improbable that the man ruining his life would be built like a Calvin Klein model who moonlighted as a lumberjack. As if sensing the attention, Jasper dropped his heels back to the floor and turned. Owen snapped his gaze back to his screen so fast he nearly gave himself whiplash. "You okay over there?" Jasper called out. "You're typing really loud, like angry loud." "I am typing with purpose," Owen corrected, staring at a letter Q until it blurred. "Right, purpose." Jasper moved to the kitchen. "I'm going to make chili. Do you eat chili? Or is joy also against your diet?" "I eat," Owen muttered. "I just don't make a production out of it." "Vegetarian or meat?" "Meat, unless the animal was happy, then I don't want to know." Jasper laughed again. It was a nice laugh. That was the worst part. If he had a laugh like a hyena, this would be easier, but his laugh sounded like warm bourbon poured over ice. The afternoon wore on in a series of skirmishes. Owen worked in bursts of frantic energy, interspersed with periods of glare daggers at the back of Jasper's head. The snow outside showed no sign of stopping. The windows were now sheets of opaque white, the cabin feeling increasingly like a submarine at the bottom of a frozen ocean. Around 4 p.m., the light began to fail. Jasper went around turning on lamps, casting warm yellow pools of light against the timber walls. "You know," Jasper said, leaning against the counter while the chili simmered, smelling frustratingly delicious. "If we're going to be roomies for the next few days, we should probably—" Clunk! The noise came from the utility closet near the back hallway. It was a heavy, metallic sound, final and ugly. Then came a hiss. And then the low, steady hum of the forced air vents simply stopped. The silence that followed was heavy. The wind outside seemed to get louder instantly, pressing against the logs. Owen looked up from his laptop. What was that? Jasper wasn't smiling anymore. He set his spoon down and crossed the room in 3 long strides. That didn't sound good. He yanked open the utility closet door. Owen followed, hovering in the hallway, clutching his phone like it could dial 911 for HVAC emergencies. Jasper dropped to his knees in front of the furnace. It was an old beast, a hulking metal box that looked like it predated the internet. He pulled a panel off with practiced ease, peering into the dark innards. "Flashlight?" Jasper asked, hand extended without looking back. Owen switched on his phone light and handed it over. Jasper shone the beam inside, his face close to the machinery. He squinted, reached in, wiggled a wire, and swore softly. "What?" Owen asked, dread curling in his gut. "Is it the pilot light? You said it was twitchy." "Not the pilot light," Jasper said grimly. He sat back on his heels, wiping grease onto his jeans. The playful ski bum was gone, replaced by someone competent and serious. The control board. I smelled ozone when I opened the panel. A capacitor popped. "Okay," Owen said. "So, fix it." Jasper looked up at him, the flashlight casting sharp shadows across his face. "I can't fix a fried circuit board, Owen, not without a spare. And the spare is at the hardware store in town, which is currently on the other side of 5 feet of snow." Owen stared at the silent metal box. He could already feel the temperature dropping. The cabin wasn't insulated for this kind of silence. Without the active push of heat, the cold from the walls began to creep inward like a living thing. "So we have no heat," Owen clarified. "We have the fireplace," Jasper said, standing up. He handed Owen his phone back. "And about a cord of wood on the back porch." "The fireplace is decorative," Owen argued. "It's ambient." "It's stone," Jasper corrected. "It's a heat sink. If we keep it fed, it'll keep the main room above freezing." "But the bedrooms—" He glanced up toward the loft. "The loft is going to be an icebox in about 2 hours. Heat rises, but without the blower pushing it, the skylights are just going to suck the warmth right out." Owen looked up at the loft railing. His sanctuary, his bed. "You're saying I can't sleep up there?" Owen said. "I'm saying if you sleep up there, you'll wake up a popsicle," Jasper said. He moved past Owen, heading for the living room. "We need to consolidate to the main floor. Block off the hallway and the loft to keep the heat in the central room." Owen followed him, watching as Jasper started assessing the furniture arrangement. "This is ridiculous," Owen said, his voice rising in pitch. "I am not sleeping on the floor in the living room with you. I have standards. I have personal space requirements." Jasper turned, grabbing a heavy wool blanket from the back of the sofa. "Look, Owen, it's going to be 10 degrees tonight. Negative with the wind chill. We can argue about personal space, or we cannot die of hypothermia. I'm voting for the not dying option." He looked at Owen, his dark eyes serious. "Grab your duvet and your pillows. Bring them down. Now." There was no please. There was no customer service voice, just command. And to Owen's absolute horror, his traitorous body responded to the tone. He felt a shiver that had nothing to do with the cold. "Fine," Owen snapped, turning for the stairs. "But I am building a wall." "Build a castle for all I care," Jasper called after him. "Just bring the down comforter." By 8 p.m., the cabin had transformed. The open, airy space felt smaller now, the shadows pressing in from the corners where the firelight couldn't reach. The silence was absolute, save for the crackle of the logs and the relentless howling of the wind outside. Owen sat cross-legged on his mattress, which he had dragged down the stairs with a great deal of cursing, holding his hands toward the fire. He was wearing his coat again, plus his scarf. Jasper was on the other side of the hearth. He had fed the fire with a mesmerizing efficiency, arranging the logs to maximize airflow and heat output. "Chili's good," Owen admitted quietly. He had eaten 2 bowls. It was spicy, rich, and warmed him from the inside out. "Grandma's recipe," Jasper said. He was staring into the flames, his profile etched in gold light. He looked tired. "She always said it could cure a cold or a broken heart." "My heart is fine," Owen said automatically. "It's my career that's in cardiac arrest." Jasper glanced over. "Design stuff?" "Yeah." Owen pulled his knees to his chest. "Apparently my work lacks vision. It's too safe. Too clinical." He laughed humorlessly. Which is ironic because right now, safe implies has central heating, and I would kill for that vision. "Safe isn't bad," Jasper said softly. He poked the fire with an iron poker, sending a shower of sparks up the chimney. "Safe keeps you alive. People underestimate safe." He turned his head and their eyes met across the 3 feet of space, separating their makeshift beds. The animosity from the afternoon had thinned, worn down by the sheer necessity of survival. It was hard to maintain a grudge against the man who was currently ensuring you didn't freeze to death. So, Owen said, trying to inject some of his usual acidity into the tone and failing. What's the plan for tomorrow, assuming we survive the night? Avalanche Control does their blasting at dawn usually, Jasper said. If the storm breaks, the plows might make it up by noon. If not, he shrugged. We have food, we have wood, we have whiskey. And we have one room, Owen muttered. He looked around the fortress of solitude he'd constructed, a barrier of couch cushions and his suitcase separating his mattress from Jasper's sleeping bag. It looked childish now. Hey, Owen. What? You might want to move a little closer to the hearth, Jasper said gently. You're shivering. Owen realized his teeth were chattering. The cold was a physical weight, pressing against his back. I'm fine, Owen lied. Right, Jasper said. He didn't push. He just reached out and tossed another log onto the fire. Owen watched him. He watched the way Jasper's hands moved, confident and scarred. He watched the way the firelight played across his throat. He realized with a sinking sensation in his stomach that the danger wasn't just the cold. The danger was that trapped in this box of wood and stone, stripped of his city armor and his distractions, he was starting to find the enemy comforting. Owen laid back on his pillows, pulling his duvet up to his nose. He could feel the heat radiating from the fire, and just beyond that, the presence of the other man. Good night, Jasper, he whispered into the wool. There was a pause just long enough for the wind to rattle the door hinges one more time. Night, Owen. Try to stay warm. Owen closed his eyes. The blizzard screamed outside, trying to find a way in. But for now, the fire held. An annoying, cheerful, competent Jasper was 6 feet away, breathing steadily in the dark. It was going to be a very long week. Chapter 2. Jasper. The Art of Zen Maintenance and Blowtorches. Jasper woke to the sound of imaginative cursing. It wasn't the lazy, muffled cursing of a man casually stubbing his toe. This was precise, enunciated, high-velocity profanity delivered with the cadence of a Shakespearean soliloquy. He blinked, his eyelashes feeling heavy and strange, and realized 2 things simultaneously. First, he was buried under 3 heavy wool blankets and was still cold. Second, the air in the cabin wasn't just brisk, it was biting. He could see his own breath puffing out in white clouds against the gray morning light filtering through the loft window. The cursing escalated from general grievances against nature to specific anatomical suggestions regarding the cabin's lineage. It was coming from the bathroom. Jasper grow-proggered out of the warm cocoon of the sofa, his feet hitting the floorboards with a slap of instant regret. The temperature had to be hovering near freezing inside. Outside, the wind was howling like a banshee with a stubbed toe, darker than 8 a.m. had any right to be. He wrapped his arms around his chest, shivering violently in his thermal Henley, and followed the sounds of distress toward the tiny bathroom tucked under the stairs. The door was open. I swear to every god of infrastructure, if you snap, I will melt you into a modern art installation, a voice hissed. Jasper leaned against the doorframe, teeth chattering. The sight before him temporarily suspended his hypothermia. Owen was crouched beneath the pedestal sink, his back to the door. He was wearing a sleeping mask pushed up into his disheveled hair, a black cashmere sweater that looked like it cost more than Jasper's truck, and a pair of silk boxers with a subtle recurring pattern of tiny martini glasses. He was also wielding a creme brulee torch. Good morning, Jasper rasped, his voice rough with sleep. Are we torturing the plumbing? Owen didn't flinch. He didn't even turn around. He just kept the blue flame of the torch moving in steady, confident sweeps along the copper pipe extending from the wall. We are engaging in aggressive negotiations with the intake valve. Unless you prefer brushing your teeth with snow, I suggest you find something warmer to wear and stop letting the draft in. A blowtorch? Jasper asked, stepping fully into the small room. The heat coming off the flame was the most inviting thing he'd ever felt. Where did you even get that? Did you pack a pastry kit? Emergency supply box under the sink, Owen clipped out. He finally shut the gas off, the hiss dying away. He stood up, and for a second, the height difference between them felt negligible because Owen's glare was 10 feet tall. I assumed it was for thawing locks, though based on the decor in this place, maybe the previous owners just really liked caramelized sugar. Owen turned the tap. A groan echoed through the pipes, followed by a shudder, and then a thin, hesitant stream of water sputtered out. One corner of Owen's mouth ticked up, just a fraction. Vindication. He shivered then, a full-body tremor that shook his lean frame. It broke the spell of his competence. Jasper stopped looking at the victory of the running water and really looked at Owen. The man was turning a shade of blue that clashed with his expensive knitwear. His bare legs were covered in goosebumps, and his hands, still clutching the torch, were shaking. "You're freezing," Jasper said, the observation bypassing his brain's filter. An astute observation, wilderness boy. Did they teach you that in ranger school? Owen tried to cross his arms for warmth, but succeeded only in nearly branding his own bicep with the hot nozzle of the torch. He hissed and dropped the tool on the bath mat. Jasper didn't think. He stripped off his heavy flannel robe, the oversized red and black buffalo check one he'd slept in over his thermals, and stepped forward. Arms. What? Arms, Jasper repeated, and when Owen was too slow to react, Jasper simply draped the heavy fabric over him, pulling the lapels tight. For a heartbeat, they were close enough to share air. Jasper could smell the faint, expensive scent of sandalwood clinging to Owen's neck, cutting through the smell of butane and mildew. Owen looked up, his green eyes wide and startled behind the wire-rimmed glasses he must have shoved on the moment he woke up. The defensive sarcasm was gone, replaced by a raw, shivering vulnerability. Jasper's hands lingered on the flannel shoulders a second too long. His thumbs brushed the cashmere underneath, sensing the tension in Owen's trapezius muscles. He felt a sudden, illogical urge to optimize this situation, to rub the heat back into those arms, to pull the man closer until the shivering stopped. Owen cleared his throat, harsh and loud in the small space. He stepped back, clutching the robe closed at his throat, drowning in the fabric. He looked ridiculous. He looked adorable. "The heater is dead," Owen announced, his voice regaining its sharp edge as he retreated to the safety of facts. "Pilot light won't catch. I tried. The thermostat is just a decorative plastic circle on the wall at this point." "Electric baseboards?" Jasper asked, mourning the loss of his robe as the cold air bit through his thermals. "Dead. Power's out. I assume a tree went down." Owen gestured vaguely toward the main room. "We have running water thanks to my pyromania, but the ambient temperature is dropping fast. We need a new plan." "Right. Plan." Jasper rubbed his hands together, his brain finally kicking into gear. The cabin wasn't just a quirky rental anymore, it was a problem to be solved. And Jasper loved solving problems almost as much as he loved people who underestimated him. Breakfast first. Calories act as a furnace. Then we survive. The culinary situation was bleak but organized. 10 minutes later, they stood in the kitchenette. Owen had already arranged the meager contents of the pantry on the counter, grouped by food group and package size. They ate cold granola bars that tasted like sawdust and dried cranberries while staring out the floor-to-ceiling windows. Normally, the view from Whispering Pine Cabin was a selling point, an undulating sweep of evergreens leading down to the valley floor. Today, it was just white, a thick, aggressive wall of white. The wind battered the glass, vibrating the panes in their frames. The snow wasn't falling. It was being driven sideways, obliterating the horizon, the trees, and any hope of a quick exit. "So," Owen said, chewing aggressively on a particularly hard oat cluster. "This is the part where you tell me you have a secret satellite phone and a helicopter on speed dial." "I have a whistle," Jasper offered brightly, "and I know how to make a distress signal out of pine boughs, but nobody's going to see it in this visibility." Owen stared at him. "A whistle. It's a very loud whistle." Owen adjusted his glasses, the oversized sleeves of Jasper's robe bunching around his wrists. Okay, let's calibrate expectations. How bad is this? Honestly? Jasper turned from the window, leaning his hip against the counter. It's a classic Cascades dumper. 2 feet overnight, probably another two coming today. The roads will be impassable until the plows can get up here, and the county prioritizes the main resort roads first. We're at the end of a 3-mile spur. Timeline? Maybe tomorrow afternoon for the plows, maybe Christmas morning. Owen closed his eyes and pinched the bridge of his nose. Christmas morning, wonderful. I'm trapped in a frozen wooden box with a human golden retriever, and I'm going to miss my sister's first holiday with the baby. I'm more of a St. Bernard, Jasper corrected. Rescues, barrel of brandy, generally helpful. And look on the bright side. If we freeze to death, you won't have to explain your employment gap to your family. Owen's eyes snapped open. Too soon. Sorry. Jasper wasn't really sorry. He saw the flicker of fight return to Owen's eyes. Anger was warmer than despair. Look, the immediate issue isn't the road. It's the heat. The cabin is basically a sieve. If we don't get that fireplace going hot and fast, the pipes you just saved are going to freeze again. And then we start freezing. I saw the fireplace, Owen said, gesturing to the massive stone hearth that dominated the living area. I also saw the wood basket. It contains 3 twigs and a gum wrapper. Yeah, the last renters must have cleaned it out. Jasper walked over to the mudroom door, peering out the small side window. The main woodshed is out back, about 50 yards past the deck. Owen looked down at his feet. He was wearing socks. Near the door sat a pair of sleek black Italian leather Chelsea boots that looked like they had been designed by someone who had heard of snow but never actually met it. Those aren't going to cut it, Jasper said gently, unless you want to lose a toe to frostbite, which really ruins the line of a good suit. Owen sighed, a sound that seemed to come from the depths of his soul. I have loafers, I have the boots, and I have running sneakers that are mostly mesh. I packed for a moody creative retreat, not an expedition to the Antarctic. Lucky for you, Jasper grinned, opening the narrow utility closet in the mudroom. My dad never throws anything away. He rummaged through the chaotic pile of gear that the Cordova family had accumulated over 3 decades. There were tangled fishing lines, deflated floating tubes, and mismatched gloves. Finally, he struck gold. Or rather, he struck neon. He pulled out a puffer coat from the mid-90s. It was a blinding electric yellow with bright purple triangular accents on the shoulders. It looked like a radioactive marshmallow. Absolutely not, Owen stated flatly. It's down-filled, Jasper promised, shaking it out. A faint scent of mothballs and old cedar drifted into the room. Rated for 20 below. And look, there are boots. He unearthed a pair of rubber muck boots that were 2 sizes too big for anyone normal. Owen looked at the coat as if it were contagious. I have standards, Jasper. I have an aesthetic. If I die in that, my ghost will never rest. I'll haunt this cabin forever, critiquing the curtains. You'll be warm, Jasper countered, tossing the coat at him. Owen caught it by reflex, his nose wrinkling. Besides, think of the safety benefits. If you get buried in a drift, I can spot you from space. You look visible. Owen held the coat up. It was so puffy it seemed to have its own gravitational pull. He looked at the coat, then at the frosted window, then at his shivering hands. I hate you, Owen muttered, shoving his arms into the sleeves. He zipped it up. It swallowed him whole, turning the lean, sharp-edged designer into a walking lemon meringue. Jasper bit the inside of his cheek to keep from laughing. You look majestic, like a very angry sun. Let's just go get the damn wood. The journey to the woodshed was less of a walk and more of a swim. Stepping off the porch was a mistake. The wind hit them with the force of a physical blow, sucking the air right out of Jasper's lungs. The snow wasn't knee-deep, it was thigh-deep. Follow my tracks, Jasper yelled over the gale, breaking a path. He trudged forward, lifting his legs high, sinking with every step. Behind him, he heard a muffled noise that might have been a curse word or a sob. He glanced back. Owen was wading through the powder, the yellow coat a beacon in the gray swirl. He looked miserable, stumbling in the oversized boots, but he was keeping up. They reached the shed, a low-slung structure leaning precariously against a stand of pines. Jasper shouldered the door open, and they tumbled inside, out of the wind. The silence was sudden and ringing. The shed smelled of damp earth and pine resin. It was stacked floor to rafter with seasoned Douglas fir rounds, but they weren't split. Okay, Jasper huffed, brushing snow off his shoulders. He felt alive. The cold woke up every nerve ending, the physical exertion pumping blood to his extremities. We need to split enough for 24 hours, maybe more. He grabbed the splitting maul from its hook. It was heavy, the handle worn smooth by his father's hands, then his own. He set a large round of wood on the chopping block in the center of the dirt floor. Stand back, Jasper warned. He widened his stance, measured the distance, and swung. It was muscle memory. The slide of his hand down the handle, the engage of his core, the sharp exhalation of breath as the heavy steel head struck the wood. Crack. The log split cleanly in two, falling away with a satisfying thud. The rhythm took over. Set, swing, crack, set, swing, crack. It was meditative. It was the one place in his life where effort equaled immediate, tangible results. No grant applications, no skeptical family members asking when he'd get a real job, just wood and steel. After the sixth log, he felt a prickle on the back of his neck. He paused, resting the axe head on the block, and wiped sweat from his forehead. He looked up. Owen was leaning against a stack of unsplit wood, watching him. The yellow coat was unzipped halfway, revealing the black sweater underneath. His glasses were fogged at the corners. He was staring at Jasper's arms. Jasper glanced down at himself. He'd taken off his outer shell to chop, working in just his thermal Henley. The sleeves were pushed up. He knew his forearms were vascular when he worked out. He knew the sweat was probably making his skin gleam in the dim light. He felt a sudden, smug warmth bloom in his chest that had nothing to do with the exercise. Enjoying the show? Jasper grinned, leaning on the axe handle. Owen jerked, his eyes snapping up to Jasper's face. A flush crept up his neck, distinct even in the cold shed. I was evaluating your form. It seems adequate, efficient use of kinetic energy. Uh-huh. And I was checking for structural spiders, Owen added quickly, turning his head to inspect a completely empty corner of the ceiling. This place looks like an arachnid convention center. Sure. Jasper laughed, effortless and light. You want to try? It warms you up faster than watching. Owen looked at the axe, then back at Jasper. His jaw set. Fine, I'm not helpless. I went to a lumberjack-themed bar in Portland once. Keep your expectations manageable. He stepped forward. Jasper handed him the maul. Owen took it, sagging slightly under the unexpected weight. He adjusted his grip, frowning at the handle like it was a poorly designed computer mouse. Widen your stance, Jasper instructed. Shoulder width. You don't want to chop your own foot off. Those rubber boots aren't steel-toed. Owen shuffled his feet. He lifted the axe. It wobbled. He swung deep and low, the head burying itself into the chopping block 3 inches to the left of the log. Damn it, Owen muttered, tugging at the handle. It was stuck. It's not about force, Jasper said, stepping in. It's about geometry. He moved behind Owen. He didn't mean to get so close, but the shed was cramped. His chest bumped Owen's back, or rather, the thick puff of the yellow coat. He reached around, covering Owen's hands on the handle with his own gloved ones. Owen froze. Relax your grip, Jasper murmured. His voice dropped an octave, a subconscious reaction to the proximity. He could feel the tension radiating off Owen, could see the fine hairs on the back of Owen's neck standing up. Let the tool do the work. Slide your top hand down as you swing. He guided Owen through the motion in slow motion. Lift, slide, strike. They were tangled together, Jasper's arms bracketing him, his chin nearly resting on Owen's shoulder. The air in the shed seemed to thicken, charged with static. For a second, the survival situation, the blizzard, the cold, it all vanished. There was just the heat of another body, the solid presence of a man who smelled like sandalwood and stubbornness. Owen's breath hitched, a small, ragged sound. Jasper tightened his grip on Owen's hands, an instinct to hold on, to explore this sudden magnetic pull. Owen stepped away abruptly, stumbling slightly in the massive boots. He dislodged the axe with a grunt of effort. I get it. Geometry. Slide. Don't die. He didn't look at Jasper. He stared at the log with the intensity of a laser cutter. He raised the axe again, movements stiff, cheeks flushed bright red, and brought it down with a vicious swing. Crack. The log flew apart with violent force. Ideally, Jasper said, his voice sounding a little strangled to his own ears, with slightly less rage, but good job. I was picturing my ex, Owen said tightly, reaching for another log. It helps. By the time they hauled the sled, an old plastic toboggan Jasper found, back to the porch, loaded high with split wood, the tension was thick enough to insulate the attic. The wind had picked up. It screamed around the corners of the cabin, stinging their faces with ice pellets. They were both exhausted, cold, and vibrating with the weird, unresolved energy from the woodshed. Jasper looked at Owen, who was wrestling the sled over the lip of the stairs, face pinched with misery and determination. He looked like an angry, neon marshmallow fighting gravity. The seriousness of it, the cold, the danger, the sexual tension, it was too much. Jasper needed to break it before one of them snapped. He dropped his end of the sled. Avalanche Protocol 7, Jasper shouted over the wind. Owen looked up, panting. What? Jasper grabbed a snow shovel leaning against the rail. He held it like a mystical staff and widened his eyes frantically. Protocol 7. The erratic snow snake maneuver. Quick, defend the perimeter. He began to flail. It was a move he usually reserved for the 6-year-olds in his ski school classes, a chaotic, limb-noodling dance while stabbing the shovel into the drift on the porch, making heroic whoosh noises. What are you doing? Owen shouted, staring at him. I'm scaring away the drifts. Jasper lunged at a pile of snow, slipped on a patch of ice, and executed a spectacular pirouette that ended with him bear-hugging a support column. It's highly technical. You wouldn't understand. Owen stared. He stared for a long, frozen second, and then his face cracked. A laugh bubbled out of him. It wasn't a cool, cynical chuckle. It was a rusty, startled bark of laughter that surprised them both. Owen doubled over, bracing his hands on his knees, shaking with it. You look... Owen gasped. You look like a drunk octopus fighting a lawn chair. The sound of Owen's laughter was warmer than the blowtorch. It transformed his face, crinkling the corners of his eyes, stripping away the harsh lines of stress. Jasper felt that laugh settle right in the center of his chest. Is it working? Jasper asked, breathless, grinning like an idiot. The snow is terrified, Owen wheezed, wiping snow from his glasses. I'm terrified. Please stop before you break a hip. Fine, Jasper conceded, dusting himself off. But if we survive this, it was definitely because of the snake maneuver. If we survive this, Owen said, straightening up and offering a small, genuine smile, I'm never letting you live that down. With the fire finally roaring, a beast of a blaze that Jasper built with architectural precision, the cabin transformed. The terrifying gray light of the storm was kept at bay by the warm, flickering orange glow. They fell into a routine that could only be described as domestic triage. Okay, Owen said, standing before the kitchen counter. He had taken off the yellow coat, thank God, but kept the flannel robe. We need to inventory. I've categorized the cans. We have protein, vegetables, and questionable despair. Questionable despair? Jasper asked, feeding another log into the fire. Canned yams and syrup from 2018. Owen held up the tin with 2 fingers. Botulism is a distinct possibility. My aunt brings those every Thanksgiving, Jasper noted. They survive nuclear winters. We'll save them for a tactical last resort. Owen moved a stack of cans to the left. I propose we combine the black beans, the corn, and the diced tomatoes into a stew. We can heat it on the grate. Look at you, Jasper teased, walking over to inspect the lineup. Housewives of the wilderness. You even arrange them by label color? Visual chaos leads to mental chaos, Owen said, aligning a can of peaches so it was perfectly parallel to the counter edge. If I have to die in a snowstorm, I refuse to do it amidst clutter. Jasper watched him. He saw the way Owen's hands moved, precise, deliberate. While Jasper brought the brute force and the optimism, Owen brought order. He created structure out of the mess. It was soothing. "You're good at that," Jasper said quietly. "At stacking cans? Yes, 4 years of design school really paid off." "No, at seeing how things fit together." Jasper picked up a can of chili. "I would have just thrown everything in a pot and hoped for the best. You have a plan." Owen looked at him, surprised by the compliment. "Someone has to." Evening came early, the darkness swallowing the world outside by 4 p.m. The temperature inside the cabin hadn't fully recovered, but the radius around the fireplace was livable. They sat on the floor, the expensive leather sofas pushed as close to the hearth as safety allowed. The stew bubbled in a saucepan on the grate, smelling of cumin and tomato. It wasn't gourmet, but to Jasper, starving after the woodchopping marathon, it smelled like heaven. They ate from mugs sitting cross-legged on the rug. The silence wasn't sharp anymore. It was heavy and companionable, filled with the crackle of burning pine and the howling wind that felt, for now, like it couldn't touch them. Jasper leaned back against the sofa, stretching his legs out. His socks were drying on the fender. Near them, hanging off the mantel, was his burgundy wool scarf. Owen was staring at it. "It's handmade," Owen said. It wasn't a question. He carefully set his empty mug down. "The tension is uneven in the first few rows, but then it settles into a perfect rhythm. Whoever made it was learning as they went." Jasper touched the soft wool. "My sister, Elena, she owns a yarn shop in town. The Nitwit. She has a terrible sense of humor." "I like it," Owen said. "The color suits you. It's warm." "She made it last Christmas," Jasper said, watching the firelight dance on the ceiling. "It was partially a bribe. She wanted me to wear it when I pitched my adaptive ski program to the board. Said it was armor." "Adaptive ski program?" Owen tilted his head, the fire reflecting in his lenses. Jasper tensed. He hadn't meant to bring that up. It was the thing he held closest to his chest, the dream his parents called his charity hobby. "Yeah," Jasper said, keeping his voice light. "It's a thing I'm working on. Making the mountain accessible for people with different mobility needs. Sit skis, outriggers, specialized instruction. Most resorts treat it as an afterthought. I want to make it a core part of Cascade Ridge." He waited for the polite nod, the glazed look. The "that sounds nice, honey," he got from his mother. "That's lucrative," Owen said. Jasper blinked. "What?" "From a business standpoint, it opens up an entirely new demographic. Families who can't vacation together because one member can't ski. You capture that market, you capture the whole family unit, plus the PR value regarding inclusivity." Owen looked at him, his gaze sharp and assessing. "But that's not why you're doing it." "No," Jasper said softly. "I'm doing it because I had a student 2 years ago. A kid who lost his leg, he thought he'd never feel fast again. Getting him down that mountain, watching his face." Jasper trailed off. He shrugged. "My family thinks it's cute. They think I should go manage the lodge like a grown-up. Stop playing in the snow." He braced himself. This was the part where Owen agreed. Owen with his Italian boots and serious job and high-stakes burnout. Owen scowled. He actually looked offended. He shifted, turning his body fully toward Jasper. "That is profoundly stupid," Owen declared. Jasper laughed, startled. "Thanks." "I'm serious," Owen insisted. He leaned forward, stabbing a finger in the air for emphasis. "You kept us alive today. You diagnosed the threat, you formulated a plan, you managed the resources, the wood, the food, the gear, and you managed the morale." "I did the snake dance," Jasper muttered. "Exactly," Owen said, intense. "You read the room. You saw I was spiraling, and you broke the tension. That's high-level emotional intelligence, Jasper. Keeping people safe and calm in a crisis isn't playing. It's leadership." Jasper stared at him. The fire popped, sending a shower of sparks up the chimney. He was used to being liked. People liked Jasper. He was fun. He was easy. But he wasn't used to being seen. He wasn't used to someone looking past the smile and recognizing the work involved in maintaining it. His throat felt tight. You have a weird way of giving a compliment, Fitzwilliam. You make it sound like an architectural review. I call it like I see it, Owen said, his voice softer now. He didn't pull back. Your family is wrong. You're very good at this. The air between them changed again. It wasn't the jagged sexual tension of the woodshed. It was something heavier, sweeter, a gravitational pull. Jasper looked at Owen, really looked at him, and saw the loneliness behind the sharp edges, the kindness he tried so hard to hide. Owen, Jasper started. He didn't know what he was going to say. Maybe, thank you. Maybe, come here. Crack. The sound was like a gunshot. It came from directly above their heads. Dust rained down from the ceiling beams, creating a hazy halo in the firelight. The heavy timber roof groaned, a deep, sickening sound of wood under intolerable pressure. Jasper was on his feet before the echo faded, the instinct taking over instantly. He grabbed his heavy flashlight from the mantel and shot the beam upward. The main support beam crossing the vaulted ceiling had a fissure running down its center. As they watched, the crack widened by a fraction of an inch, shedding splinters onto the rug. The snow load, Jasper whispered, the warmth in his chest turning to ice. It's too heavy for the roof. Owen stood up slowly, looking from the beam to Jasper, his face pale in the flashlight's glow. When you said survive, he said, his voice unsteady, was structural collapse on the bingo card? No, Jasper said, gripping the flashlight until his knuckles turned white. New plan. Nobody sleeps under the loft tonight. He looked at Owen, the fear mirrored in those green eyes. The cozy bubble of the firelight had popped. The cabin wasn't a fortress anymore. It was a trap, and it was closing in. Chapter 3, Owen. The structural integrity of desire. The sound was not a creak. Houses like Whispering Pine, built from timber thick enough to withstand a grizzly bear swipe, creaked all the time. They settled. They groaned. They whispered, fittingly enough. This was a crack. A violent, sickening snap followed by a shudder that vibrated through the floorboards of the loft and straight into Owen's spine. Owen sat bolt upright in bed, heart hammering a frantic rhythm against his ribs. The darkness of the loft was absolute, save for the faint gray square of the skylight, which was currently buried under who knew how much snow. Don't panic, a voice said from the darkness. Calm, measured, utterly terrifying because of how awake it sounded. Owen fumbled for his glasses on the nightstand, jamming them onto his face as if high-definition vision would somehow reinforce the roof beams. I'm not panicking, I'm assessing. Assessing usually involves a high heart rate when the building sounds like it's being stepped on by Godzilla. A beam of light cut across the room. Jasper was already up, fully dressed in his thermal layers and flannel, standing near the top of the ladder. He aimed a heavy-duty flashlight at the ceiling beams where the pitch of the roof met the wall. Heavy snowfall, Jasper said, the light playing over a fissure in the support beam that definitely hadn't been there when they went to sleep. We had ice melt during the day, then a freeze, then 2 feet of powder on top. The eaves are compromised. Compromised, Owen repeated, swinging his legs out from under the quilt. The air in the loft was biting, significantly colder than it had been 4 hours ago. Compromised as in needs a contractor next week, or compromised as in flattened like a pancake in 10 minutes? Jasper turned the flashlight toward Owen. The beam blinded him for a second before Jasper considerately angled it down. Compromised as in we are evacuating this floor immediately. Grab your essential gear, leave the suitcase, just warm clothes and your work stuff. Owen didn't argue. The usual retort about Jasper's bossiness died in his throat when another groan echoed above their heads, this one sounding like a ship hull buckling under pressure. Adrenaline, cold and sharp, flooded Owen's system. He moved with efficient hysteria, shoving his dead laptop, his chargers, and his precious moleskin notebook into his messenger bag. He grabbed his pile of black cashmere items, scarves, sweaters, a beanie that cost more than his first car, and bundled them into his arms. Go, Jasper ordered, pointing to the ladder. Owen scrambled down, the rungs biting into his bare feet. He hit the ground floor and spun around, expecting Jasper to be right behind him. Instead, Jasper was still up there, hauling the mattress from the spare twin bed toward the edge of the loft. "What are you doing?" Owen hissed up at him. "Get down here." "We need somewhere to sleep, Owen. The floorboards down there aren't exactly memory foam." Jasper shoved the mattress over the railing. It landed with a soft, heavy whoomp in the center of the living room. Then came a cascade of pillows, followed by the heavy handmade quilts. Finally, Jasper descended, moving with a fluid, athletic grace despite the urgency. He hit the floor and immediately looked up, shining the light back at the ceiling. "Okay, the main A-frame supports are fine. It's just the dormer extension over the loft. If that gives way, it'll crush everything up top. But the main room structure will hold." Owen stared at him. In the harsh beam of the flashlight, Jasper looked rugged and capable, his jaw set in a grim line, his dark eyes scanning the architecture with professional intensity. He looked like the kind of man who ate blizzards for breakfast. For the first time since arriving at this god-forsaken cabin, Owen felt a distinct lack of sarcasm. He felt small and cold and terrifyingly reliant on a man who wore primary colors unironically. "Right," Owen said, his voice sounding thin in the cavernous room. "So, we live down here now." Jasper turned to him, the tension in his shoulders dropping an inch. He flashed a quick, albeit strained, smile. "Welcome to Base Camp Cordova. Population 2. Amenities include a fireplace, a nervous breakdown, and zero privacy." Jasper. The living room had shrunk. Technically, the square footage remained unchanged, but with the furniture shoved against the walls and a makeshift nest of mattresses and blankets dominating the space in front of the hearth, the cabin felt intimate. Disturbingly so. Jasper dragged the heavy oak coffee table toward the kitchen area, his boots scraping against the wood floor. He could feel Owen watching him. He'd felt Owen's eyes on him for the last hour as they rearranged their lives to fit within a 12 by 12 square of safety. "Lift with your knees," Owen said from the corner, where he was uselessly folding and unfolding a blanket. Jasper laughed, a puff of visible breath escaping his lips. "Thanks, Coach. You want to spot me?" "I think I'd just be collateral damage." Jasper shoved an armchair next to the window, creating a barrier against the drafty glass. He was trying to keep the mood light, but his stomach was churning acid. This was his family's cabin. His grandfather had built that loft. The sound of the timber cracking earlier had felt like a bone breaking in his own body. If the roof caved in, the sale value would plummet. His parents would lose the money they were banking on for retirement, and everyone would point to Jasper, the one who was supposed to be watching the place, and say, "Of course, he was playing house in the snow instead of taking care of business." He dusted his hands off on his flannel-clad thighs and turned to survey their new kingdom. The mattress lay directly in front of the stone hearth, covered in a chaotic mix of Owen's sleek, monochromatic throws and the Cordova family's heirloom quilts. "It's cozy," Jasper offered, trying to sell it, "like a slumber party." Owen stood by the fireplace, arms crossed tightly over his chest. He was wearing 3 layers of black wool and still looked like he was freezing to death. "A slumber party where the house is actively trying to murder us. It's strictly joyous." "Hey!" Jasper stepped into Owen's personal space, unavoidable now, and reached for the poker to stoke the dying fire. "We're okay. I've survived worse than this." "Oh, really? When?" "Avalanche training in 18. Spent a night in a snow cave. Compared to that, this is the Ritz. We have dry walls and—" He gestured vaguely toward the kitchen. "Canned soup." Owen didn't smile, but his shoulders lowered slightly. He pulled his messenger bag onto his lap and sat cross-legged on the edge of the mattress, withdrawing a small black notebook. Jasper paused. He'd seen Owen holding that book like a lifeline for 3 days, but he'd never seen him open it. Owen usually guarded his creative work like state secrets, shielding his screens and turning papers over whenever Jasper walked by. "You going to design us a better roof?" Jasper asked gently, adding a log to the fire. And then Owen flipped a page, the paper rustling in the quiet room. "I'm trying to distract myself from the fact that the wind sounds like a banshee going through a breakup." He hesitated, his pen hovering over the paper. And no, not a roof. Jasper moved closer. The firelight cast dancing shadows across Owen's face, highlighting the sharp angle of his cheekbones and the dark smudge of exhaustion under his eyes. He looked fragile, but there was a steeliness to his hand as it moved across the page. Can I see? The question hung in the air, waited. Owen's hand froze. His instinct was clearly to snap the book shut. Jasper saw the muscle in his forearm twitch. But then slowly, Owen let out a breath and slid the notebook across the mattress. Jasper wiped his hands on his pants again before picking it up. It wasn't a doodle, it was a portrait. It was him, Jasper. But not the Jasper he saw in the mirror every morning, the guy with the crow's feet and the anxious smile who worried he wasn't serious enough for the world. This Jasper looked solid, heroic almost. The sketch captured Jasper standing at the top of the ladder from earlier, the flashlight beam cutting through the dark. Owen had used quick, aggressive strokes of charcoal to render the bulk of Jasper's shoulders and the protective slant of his body. The figure in the drawing wasn't just a ski instructor, he was a guardian. He looked like someone you could trust with your life. Jasper swallowed hard, a lump forming in his throat. Owen. It's just a quick study, Owen said dismissively, looking at the fire. Your proportions are interesting. Good harsh lighting. You made me look... Jasper struggled for the word. Capable? You made me look like I know what I'm doing. Owen turned his head, his green eyes catching the firelight behind his glasses. You kept the roof from falling on my head, Jasper. I'm pretty sure you know exactly what you're doing. A flush that had nothing to do with the radiant heat of the stove crept up Jasper's neck. His family looked at him and saw a golden retriever. Fun to have around, but not useful for the hard stuff. Elena saw a project. Canmore, his boss, saw liability. Owen, this grumpy, fastidious city boy who treated optimization like a religion, looked at him and saw strength. You have a hell of a talent, Jasper said quietly, handing the book back with reverence. For a guy who claims he has no vision. Owen took the book, his fingers brushing Jasper's. His skin was cool, startling against Jasper's warmth. I have vision, Owen murmured, staring at the sketch. I just usually pointed at the wrong things. Owen. By 6 o'clock, the cabin temperature had dropped from uncomfortable to concerning. The wind was battering the exterior walls with such force that the heavy beams groaned in protest. The draft around the window frames was no longer a breeze. It was a physical presence, slicing through the room like invisible blades. Dinner is served, Owen announced, carrying 2 steaming mugs of tomato soup to the mattress. Chef's special. It's Campbell's, aged in a can for an indeterminate amount of time, paired with crackers that may or may not be stale. Jasper accepted the mug with a grateful nod. He was sitting by the fire, obsessively feeding it wood. He'd stopped making jokes about 20 minutes ago, which alarmed Owen more than the structural noises. Thanks, Jasper said. He took a sip, wincing slightly as the hot liquid hit his tongue. We need to conserve the wood. Owen sat down, wrapping both hands around his mug to leach the heat into his freezing palms. I thought we had plenty. We have plenty for a normal winter night, Jasper corrected. But the electric wall units are dead. The breaker blew an hour ago, and I can't get to the box outside in this whiteout. The fire is the only heat source we have. Owen looked at the fireplace. It was roaring, yet he could see his breath misting in the air just 3 feet away from it. Okay, so we stay close to the fire. We have the mattress. We have blankets. It's going to be -10 tonight, Owen, without wind chill. Jasper set his mug down on the stone hearth. He looked worried. Not the performative, oh no, we ran out of cocoa worry, but deep, furrowed brow concern. He stood up and walked to the pile of gear he'd salvaged from the closet earlier. What are you doing? Survival math, Jasper muttered. He pulled out a stuff sack and unrolled a sleeping bag. It wasn't a standard, fluffy slumber party bag. It was technical gear, sleek, orange, and gray, with a hood that looked like something an astronaut would wear. This is a 0-degree bag, Jasper explained, shaking it out. It's designed to keep a human alive in the conditions outside right now. The quilts, they're nice, but they're cotton and batting. They won't hold the heat if the draft picks up. He laid the bag out on top of the mattress right in front of the fire. It looked impossibly narrow. Okay, Owen said slowly. Good, put it on the pile. Jasper looked at him, his dark eyes serious. Owen, I have one bag. The silence that stretched between them drowned out the wind. One, Owen repeated. It's an emergency bag. I keep it for solo treks. Jasper rubbed the back of his neck, looking uncharacteristically awkward. I'm not trying to pull a move here, but if you sleep under those quilts tonight, you're going to wake up with hypothermia, or you won't wake up. Owen stared at the orange nylon tube. It was a mummy bag. It tapered at the feet. It was designed for one person to lay like a corpse in suspended animation. And what about you? Owen asked. If I take the bag, what do you do? Jasper shrugged, picking up his soup again. I'm used to the cold. I've got layers. I'll wrap up in the quilts and feed the fire every hour. Owen looked at Jasper's hands. Broad, scarred, capable hands that were currently trembling just slightly. Whether from cold or fatigue, it didn't matter. The man had evacuated the loft, hauled a mattress, secured the windows, and kept Owen sane for 6 hours. No, Owen said. Jasper blinked. No? I'm not taking the magic warm bag while you freeze to death, guarding the fire like a Dickensian orphan. Owen stood up, setting his mug down with a definitive clatter. That is not happening. Owen, be reasonable. You have zero body fat. You're shivering right now. We share it. Jasper choked on his soup. He coughed, thumping his chest. Excuse me? We share it, Owen said, his voice rising a pitch. He felt a blush heating his freezing ears. It's physics, right? Body heat? 2 heat sources are better than 1. Isn't that rule number 1 of survival or whatever? Jasper looked at the bag, then back at Owen, then back at the bag. Owen, it's a mummy bag. It is extremely tight. We would literally be on top of each other. Do you want to freeze? No. Do you want me to freeze? God, no. Then we share the bag. Owen crossed his arms, trying to summon the imperious attitude he used on difficult clients who wanted to use Comic Sans. Unless you have a problem with being close to me? Jasper's gaze softened, turning dark and unreadable. Trust me, proximity isn't the problem. Good. Owen realized his heart was beating so hard it felt like a bird trapped in his chest. Then let's get it over with before my toes fall off. Jasper. The logistics of 2 grown men entering a single sleeping bag required the flexibility of a gymnast and the dignity of a toddler. Okay, Jasper said, kneeling on the mattress. The fire was banked high, casting a glow that made the orange nylon of the bag look like molten lava. There's one more thing. Owen was standing by the edge of the mattress, looking like a man about to face a firing squad. What? We have to strip. Owen's eyebrows shot up so high they disappeared under his messy bangs. I beg your pardon? Jasper sighed, raking a hand through his hair. He knew how this sounded. He sounded like a creep in a bad movie trying to seduce the unsuspecting lead. But he was a guide first and a man with a hopeless crush second. Insulation works by trapping body heat, Jasper recited, going into lecture mode to hide his nervousness. If we wear all these layers, the denim, the thick wool, it traps the cold against our skin and prevents us from sharing heat. We need base layers only, thermals, boxers, whatever is thinnest. Owen stared at him for a long beat. He seemed to be running the calculations in his head, looking for a loophole. Finding none, he let out a sharp exhale through his nose. Fine. Owen reached for the hem of his black cashmere sweater. Jasper forced himself to turn away, busily adjusting the zipper of the bag. He heard the soft swish of expensive fabrics sliding over skin, the rustle of denim, the clinking of a belt buckle. Each sound was like a tiny electric shock to Jasper's system. He quickly shed his own flannel, shivering as the cold air hit his chest. He stripped down to his gray thermal Henley and boxers, leaving his wool socks on. Ready? Owen said, his voice tight. Jasper turned back. The breath left his lungs. Owen was standing in a fitted black long-sleeve tee and boxer briefs. Without the layers of oversized designer fashion, he was lean but not frail. The line of his legs was long and pale, his knees slightly knobby, his waist narrow. He looked vulnerable and beautiful and utterly terrifying. Owen crossed his arms over his chest, shivering violently. Take a picture, Cordova. It'll last longer. Sorry, Jasper mumbled. He pulled the sleeping bag flap open. I'll go first. Big spoon in the back. Big spoon, Owen repeated faintly. Right. Jasper wriggled into the bag. It was tight even for just him. He scooted to the far edge, pressing his back against the nylon, and held the opening wide. Okay, come on inside. Owen hesitated for a fraction of a second, then sat down on the mattress and slid his legs into the bag. The contact was instantaneous. Owen's legs tangled with Jasper's, cold feet pressed against warm calves. There was a moment of awkward shuffling, elbows and ribs, knees knocking together, before they settled. Owen had to turn onto his side, facing the fire, backing into Jasper. Zip it up, Owen commanded, his voice trembling. Jasper reached over Owen's shoulder, grabbing the zipper tab. He had to pull Owen back against him, pressing their bodies flush together to get the track to close. Zip. The sound sealed them in. The world outside, the wind, the snow, the ruined roof disappeared. Inside the bag, it was a sensory overload. The smell of Owen, expensive cedar soap, and nervous sweat filled Jasper's nose. The heat was immediate, radiating where their bodies touched. Chest to back, thighs to thighs, groin to... Well? Jasper locked his muscles, terrified of moving. He draped his left arm over Owen's waist because there was literally nowhere else for it to go. His hand rested flat on Owen's stomach, feeling the rapid-fire rise and fall of his breath. Is this okay? Jasper whispered. His mouth was inches from the nape of Owen's neck, right where the dark hair curled slightly. Owen was rigid in his arms, like a board. It's efficient. Efficient, Jasper chuckled quietly. The vibration traveled through his chest and into Owen's back. Shut up, Owen whispered, but there was no bite in it. Owen was going to die. Not from the cold. Not from the crushing roof. He was going to die from the sheer, overwhelming reality of Jasper wrapped around him like a human vine. The warmth was intoxicating. It seeped through his thin shirt, thawing bones he hadn't realized were frozen. Jasper was a furnace, a solid, heavy, breathing furnace. The silence of the cabin settled around them, heavy and profound. The fire popped occasionally, casting erratic orange light against the far wall that Owen could see through the opening of the bag's hood. Owen tried to regulate his breathing. He tried to think about fonts. Helvetica, Garamond, Futura. But then Jasper shifted, his knee slotting perfectly into the bend of Owen's knee, pulling him tighter. You smell good, Jasper murmured. It sounded like he hadn't meant to say it out loud. It was a sleepy, unguarded admission. Owen's throat clicked as he swallowed. I smell like stress and canned tomato soup. No, you smell like... Jasper deepened his breath, his nose brushing the hair behind Owen's ear. Like city rain and charcoal. Owen's defenses, usually so high and fortified with razor wire, were melting. It was the heat. It had to be the heat. You usually have so much to say, Owen whispered into the darkness. Why is the golden boy quiet? Jasper's hand on Owen's stomach flexed slightly, the thumb rubbing a slow, soothing circle through the cotton of his shirt. Because usually I feel like I have to be loud to be heard. Or I have to be the funny one so people don't realize I'm actually... He trailed off. Actually what? Actually terrified that I'm just a screw-up with big dreams. Jasper's voice was barely audible. My family? They love me, but they think I'm a permanent teenager. Maybe they're right. I mean, look at us. I'm 31 and I'm sleeping on the floor of my own cabin because I let the roof break. The vulnerability in his voice cracked something open in Owen's chest. He thought of the portfolio that had gotten him fired, too safe, too predictable. He thought of how he masked his own insecurity with tailored clothes and biting wit. Owen moved his hand, sliding it over his own stomach until his fingers found Jasper's. He laced their fingers together, gripping Jasper's hand tight. "The roof broke because nature is a bitch, Jasper," Owen said firmly. "You got us down here, you built the fire, you thought of the bag. You didn't screw up." Jasper squeezed his hand back. "You think?" "I know." Owen hesitated, then allowed himself the one thing he usually denied: honesty. "In my world, everyone is polished. Sharp edges, perfect surfaces, it's cold. You're—" He struggled, feeling Jasper's breath hitch against his neck. "You're warm. You make me feel warm." Jasper went still. For a second, Owen panicked, thinking he'd crossed a line, that the forced proximity had made him say too much. Then Jasper shifted. He buried his face in the crook of Owen's neck, his forehead pressing against Owen's skin. He let out a long, ragged exhale, his entire large frame relaxing against Owen, heavy and trusting. "Go to sleep, Owen," Jasper mumbled against his skin, his voice thick with sleep and something else. Something tender. "Okay," Owen whispered. He closed his eyes. The wind howled outside, hungry and cruel, trying to find a way in. But inside the orange cocoon, held tight by the man he'd been trying so hard to dislike, Owen felt safer than he ever had in his expensive, lonely apartment. He squeezed Jasper's hand one last time and let the darkness take him. Chapter 4. Jasper. Thermodynamics of a two-person mummy bag. If holding perfectly still was an Olympic sport, Jasper would not only fail to qualify, he'd probably be banned from the stadium for excessive fidgeting. The cabin was submerged in a darkness so absolute it felt heavy, a thick velvet curtain pressed against his eyes. The only sound in the frozen world was the wind whirring the eaves outside, and the rhythmic, terrifyingly close sound of Owen breathing. They were inside the sleeping bag. The single sleeping bag. It was a marvel of modern engineering, rated for 30 below zero, a cocoon of down and high-tech nylon designed to keep a human alive in the harshest conditions. It had not, however, been designed to keep two full-grown men, one broad-shouldered ski instructor and one surprisingly lanky graphic designer. Strictly platonic while occupying the same 6 feet of space. Jasper stared up at where he assumed the ceiling was, his heart doing a frantic tap dance against his ribs. He was hyper-aware of every point of contact. The knobby ridge of Owen's spine pressed against his bicep. The play of heat radiating from Owen's back into Jasper's chest. The way their legs were tangled together in a knot that would require a sailor to undo. A shift in the nylon sounded like a thunderclap in the silence. Owen muttered something unintelligible, sleep-heavy and soft, and burrowed backward. His cold feet found purchase against Jasper's shins. Jasper bit his lip to suppress a whimper. This was torture. It was the specific, exquisite torture of having the object of your affection. An affection that had mutated from a fun little crush into something massive and terrifying over the last 72 hours, literally wrapped around you, while knowing that moving a single inch might shatter the fragile truce they'd built. He tried to regulate his breathing, counting sheep. Or, more accurately, counting the number of times Owen had insulted his flannel shirts in the past 3 days. He lost count around 12. "Focus, Cordova. You're a professional. You've pulled tourists out of tree wells. You can survive cuddling a grumpy New Yorker." But that was the problem. It wasn't the survival part that scared him. It was the fact that for the first time in his life, the relentless driving need to fix everything, to be the smiling face that made the problems go away, felt distant. In the dark, with the scent of wood smoke and Owen's expensive cedar and citrus shampoo filling the small pocket of air, Jasper didn't feel like the fun one. He just felt wanted. Or maybe that was just the body heat. A sharp intake of breath beside him broke the silence. Owen's body went rigid. The relaxed weight against Jasper's side transformed instantly into a bundle of tension, coils of muscle snapping tight. A low, distressed noise caught in Owen's throat. Not a snore, but a sound of genuine panic. Instinct overrode anxiety. Jasper didn't think. He just moved. He unglued his arm from his side and wrapped it over Owen's chest, pulling him closer. "Hey," Jasper whispered, his voice rough with disuse. He smoothed his hand over the front of Owen's cashmere sweater, because seemingly Owen slept in cashmere during survival situations. "Owen, you're okay. You're at Whispering Pine. The bear didn't get us." Owen gasped, jerking awake. His hand flew up, gripping Jasper's forearm where it lay across his chest. His fingers were icy, his grip desperate. He didn't pull away or deliver a biting remark about personal space. He just lay there, chest heaving, grounding himself against Jasper's warmth. "Jesus," Owen breathed out, the word trembling. "Nightmare?" Jasper asked gently, keeping his hand steady. He expected Owen to shove him off, to retreat into that prickly shell of sarcasm he wore like armor. Instead, Owen slumped back against the pillow they were sharing. "Work," he muttered, the confession slipping out into the darkness. "I was back in the boardroom, firing my team." Jasper frowned, his thumb tracing a slow, subconscious arc on Owen's shoulder. "I thought you got fired. Didn't you say your boss let you go?" "I did." Owen's voice was dry, stripped of its usual haughty cadence. "In the dream, I was the boss. I was firing the only people who had any actual talent because they threatened me. Because I couldn't create anything new, so I had to get rid of anyone who could." He let out a harsh, self-deprecating laugh. "Subtle, right? My subconscious is about as nuanced as a sledgehammer." The raw honesty of it cracked something open in Jasper's chest. He knew that fear. He knew it intimately. "If it helps," Jasper offered, staring up into the black void. "I just spent the last 2 hours lying here terrified that my sister is the only person on Earth who doesn't think I'm a joke." The silence that followed was heavy but different, less tense, more like the quiet before an avalanche settles. Owen shifted, the nylon swishing loudly as he rolled over. Maneuvering in the mummy bag was a logistical nightmare involving knees and elbows, but Owen managed it until they were nose to nose. Jasper couldn't see him, but he could feel the ghost of Owen's breath on his chin. "Who thinks you're a joke?" Owen asked. The sarcasm was gone, replaced by a sharp, probing curiosity. Jasper sighed, the sound vibrating through the point where their chests touched. "Everyone else, my parents. My older brother, the lawyer, my cousin, the architect." He picked at a seam on the inside of the sleeping bag. "They love me, sure. I'm Jasper. I'm the fun one. I'm the guy you call for a great weekend, or if you need someone to entertain the kids at the reunion. But nobody hands the car keys to the mascot." He felt Owen's head tilt. "Is that why you haven't finished the proposal for the adaptive program?" The accuracy of the strike took Jasper's breath away. "Ouch! Direct hit." "I'm serious, Jasper." "So am I." Jasper closed his eyes even though it made no difference in the dark. "It's easier to be the golden retriever, Owen. If I just smile and teach lessons and act like I'm happy drifting, then nobody gets disappointed when I don't achieve anything real. If I actually submit that proposal, business plans, insurance liabilities, equipment costs, and the resort manager laughs at it, then it confirms what my family thinks, that I'm just playing pretend." He waited for the platitude. He expected the usual, "you can do it." Cheerleading he gave everyone else. "That," Owen said, his voice cutting through the warm air like an ice pick, "is the stupidest thing I've ever heard." Jasper blinked, startled into a laugh. "Wow, tell me how you really feel." "I'm serious." Owen's hand moved, finding Jasper's shoulder in the dark and gripping hard. "I've watched you for 4 days. You fixed a furnace that looked like it predated the internal combustion engine. You navigated a blizzard to get firewood so we didn't freeze. You kept me from having a mental breakdown by forcing me to do jumping jacks." "Avalanche drills," Jasper corrected weakly. "Whatever. The point is, your optimism isn't stupidity, Jasper. It's a weapon. You use it to keep people safe. You use it to keep yourself sane. Owen's voice dropped, losing its edge and becoming something softer, something dangerous. My ex left me because he said I was predictable. He wanted excitement. He wanted chaos. Jasper felt his heart hammer a double-time rhythm. He sounds like an idiot. He was, Owen agreed. But he made me feel like being steady was a sin. Like being the person who plans ahead makes me boring. Owen shifted closer, his knee sliding between Jasper's legs as he sought more warmth. But lying here, with the heating grid dead and the pipes freezing? I don't want chaos. I want the guy who knows how to keep the fire lit. The air inside the bag changed. It wasn't just warm anymore, it was electrically charged. The friction of the nylon, the smell of wood smoke, the proximity, it all coalesced into a singular point of gravity. I'm not boring, Owen whispered, the insecurity stark and naked. Jasper moved his hand, finding the side of Owen's face, his thumb brushing over the stubble along Owen's jaw, then up to the cool rim of his ear. Owen, he murmured, his voice dipping low. You are the most complicated, frustrating, fascinating puzzle I have ever tried to solve. You could never be boring. Owen went still under his touch. Then, very slowly, as if waiting for Jasper to push him away, Owen leaned in. Also, he misjudged the distance in the dark and bumped their noses together. Ow, Jasper whispered, suppressing a laugh. Shut up, Owen hissed, but there was no bite in it. I'm trying to be romantic. You're doing good. Owen cut him off by closing the remaining half-inch. The kiss wasn't tentative, it was a collision, a desperate reclaiming of ground. Owen kissed like he argued, with precision and intensity, demanding a response. His lips were chapped from the dry mountain air, but his mouth was hot, and the contrast sent a jolt straight to Jasper's toes. Jasper made a wrecked sound in the back of his throat. His hand tangled in the hair at the nape of Owen's neck, pulling him closer. The limitations of the sleeping bag ceased to be a problem, and became a catalyst. There was nowhere to retreat. Every inch of Jasper was pressed against every inch of Owen. Owen groaned, a low vibration against Jasper's mouth, and bit lightly at Jasper's lower lip. Prove them wrong, he muttered against Jasper's skin. Prove them all wrong. Working on it, Jasper managed, breathless. His hands, usually so steady, fumbled as they found the hem of Owen's sweater. He slid his palms underneath, and the sensation of bare, smooth skin against his callous palms was electric. Owen shivered, arching into the touch, the cold air of the cabin forgotten entirely. Your hands are warm, Owen gasped, his hands diving down to grip Jasper's waist through his flannel shirt. Perks of the circulation, Jasper murmured, trailing his fingers up Owen's spine, mapping the vertebrae. He felt Owen unravel under his touch. The tension that Owen carried in his shoulders, the constant bracing against the world, it all melted away, replaced by a fluid, hungry urgency. It was messy. It was clumsy. Elbows knocked against the zipper, knees bumped together. But the friction of denim against flannel, the heat of skin finding skin, the desperate way Owen clung to him like Jasper was the only solid thing in a spinning universe, it was perfect. When Jasper finally managed to wrestle his arm free to cup Owen's cheek, tilting his head to deepen the kiss, he realized something terrifying. He wasn't just proving a point. He wasn't just surviving the night. He was falling. And there was no safety net at the bottom of this run. Owen pushed Jasper onto his back, wrestling for leverage in the tight space, his leg hooking firmly over Jasper's hip. Less thinking, Owen commanded, sensing Jasper's hesitation. His voice was rough, breathless. More of whatever this is. Please, Jasper whispered, surrendering to the gravity. Yes, please. Morning arrived not with a golden sunrise, but with a reluctant, slate-gray light filtering through the snow-packed skylight. Jasper woke up warm. It was a novelty he hadn't experienced in 4 days. His entire right side was toasty, radiating a comfortable heat. He kept his eyes closed, savoring it, listening to the wind which had finally, mercifully, died down to a whisper. There was a sound nearby. Scritch, scratch, scritch, scratch. Jasper peeled one eye open. Owen was still in the sleeping bag with him, mostly. He was propped up on one elbow, half his torso exposed to the chilly room, The sleeping bag pooled around his waist. He was wearing his glasses again, perched precariously on the end of his nose, and his hair was a chaotic, dark nest that defied gravity. He was holding a small moleskin notebook, sketching furiously. Jasper watched him for a moment. The focus on Owen's face was intense, his brow furrowed, lips pursed slightly. He wasn't looking at the room. He was looking at Jasper. Or rather glancing at Jasper's face, then back to the page, his hand moving in quick, confident strokes. "I hope you're drawing my good side," Jasper croaked, his morning voice scraping like gravel. Owen jumped, nearly dropping the notebook. A flush rose high on his pale cheeks, but he didn't snap the book shut. He adjusted his glasses, looking down at Jasper with an expression that was terrifyingly open. "You don't have a bad side," Owen mumbled, then immediately looked horrified that he'd said it out loud. "Physically, I mean. Personality-wise, you're a nightmare." "Good morning to you too, sunshine." Jasper grinned, stretching his legs, enjoying the way Owen's gaze tracked the movement. He propped himself up, ignoring the bite of the cold air on his bare shoulders. "What are you working on? The manifesto for my eviction?" Owen hesitated, his fingers tightening on the leather cover of the book. Then, with a jerky nod, he turned it around. It wasn't a sketch of Jasper sleeping, though there were a few of those on the opposite page. Soft, charcoal renderings of Jasper's jawline and eyelashes that made Jasper's chest ache. The main drawing was a logo. It was stylized, clean, and elegant. It showed a mountain peak formed by negative space, but the lines sweeping up to create it were actually the tracks of two skis, one straight, one carving a sit-ski turn. It was dynamic. It looked professional. It looked like real business. Beneath it, in a font that managed to be both strong and welcoming, it read, "Summit Adaptive, Cascade Ridge." Jasper stared at it. His throat closed up. It looked legitimate. It looked like something that belonged on a brochure, on a jacket, on the side of a building. "I was thinking about the branding," Owen said, his voice rushing a little nervous. "You need something that says adventure, but not danger. Something that emphasizes the equipment, but focuses on the mountain. I mean, it's rough, obviously. I'm working with a nub of a pencil and no reference material, but—" "Owen," Jasper interrupted, reaching out to touch the edge of the paper. "This is incredible." Owen shrugged, looking everywhere but at Jasper. "It's just a sketch, but if you're going to pitch this thing to your boss, you can't walk in with a Word document. You need a visual identity. People believe what they can see." "You did this while I was sleeping?" "Couldn't sleep," Owen admitted. He looked at Jasper then, his green eyes soft behind the lenses. "I kept thinking about what you said, about playing pretend. This isn't pretend, Jasper. It works. I can see it." Jasper felt a stinging heat behind his eyes. In 31 years, his family had never looked at one of his ideas and seen anything other than a cute hobby. Owen had known him for 4 days, hated him for 2 of them, and had just visualized his entire future on a 3x5 piece of paper. "Thank you," Jasper whispered. He reached out, sliding his hand behind Owen's neck to pull him down. Owen came willingly, the notebook dropping to the mattress as he met Jasper halfway. The kiss was slow, lazy, tasting of sleep and lingering warmth. It held none of the desperation of the night before. This was the comfortable, terrifying intimacy of the morning after. Jasper was just beginning to think that maybe, just maybe, getting snowed in was the best thing that had ever happened to him when the room exploded with static. KRRRSSSHHHT. Both men scrambled apart as if a grenade had been tossed into the sleeping bag. In the corner of the room on the dusty mantel, the red emergency radio, which Jasper had declared officially dead 2 days ago, sputtered to life. "Repeat all units. Stormfront has broken. Visibility increasing to 5 miles. The voice was tinny, distorted, but unmistakably human. "Plow crews are pushing past mile marker 8. ETA to the Whisper Lake turnoff is 40 minutes. I repeat, crews reaching remote cabins within the hour. Merry Christmas, folks." Silence crashed back into the room, louder than the static. Jasper stared at the radio. 40 minutes. The bubble didn't just pop. It evaporated. He looked back at Owen. He expected to see a shared look of disappointment, maybe a groan about the real world intruding. Instead, he watched Owen physically reconstruct himself in real time. Owen sat up, scrambling out of the warmth of the sleeping bag. He stood on the freezing floorboards in his boxers and the cashmere sweater, shivering, but his face had smoothed out into a blank, unreadable mask. He snatched his glasses off, cleaned them on his hem, and shoved them back on. 40 minutes, Owen said. His voice was brisk, professional. We should pack. The sheriff will probably want a statement about the heater failure. Owen? Jasper sat up, pulling the sleeping bag to his waist, feeling suddenly, agonizingly exposed. Hey, wait a second. Owen was already moving, grabbing his jeans from the back of the incredibly expensive armchair he kept refusing to sit in. I need to get my laptop packed. If the cold cracked the screen, I'm going to have to file a separate insurance claim. And I promised Meredith I'd be there by noon. If the roads are clear, I might still make appetizers. He was rambling. He was retreating. Owen! Jasper tried again, his voice harder. Can we just take a beat? We survived, Owen cut in, hopping on one foot as he pulled his jeans on. He turned to face Jasper, and the wall was up. It was 10 feet high and reinforced with steel. The soft, vulnerable man who had drawn a logo in the dawn light was gone. In his place was the cynical designer who expected the worst from everyone. We survived a disaster, Owen said, his eyes sliding away from Jasper's bare chest. Adrenaline is a hell of a drug, right? Makes you do crazy things. Is that what this was? Jasper asked quietly. Adrenaline? Owen paused. His hand hovered over the zipper of his impeccably tailored jeans. For a second, his jaw worked, a crack appearing in the armor. But then the radio crackled again. Unit 4 to base. We have visual on the Cordova cabin. Looks like smoke from the chimney. They're alive. The sound of his family name, the reminder of the sale, the expectations, the reality awaiting him seemed to snap Owen back to attention. We should get ready, Owen said, his voice flat. You don't want your rescuers to find us. Like this. He turned his back and began shoving his clothes into his sleek black duffel bag with violent efficiency. Jasper sat in the cooling sleeping bag, the beautiful sketch of his future lying ignored on the mattress beside him. He felt colder than he had in the middle of the blizzard. He picked up the notebook, running his thumb over the graphite lines of the mountain, and realized with a sinking heart that he had no idea how to ask the man standing by the door to stay involved in a life that was technically still just a fun hobby. Outside, far in the distance, the low rumble of a diesel engine grew louder, coming to save them from the snow, and to ruin absolutely everything. Chapter 5, Owen/Jasper. The Art of Structural Collapse. Sunlight filtered through the skylight, pale and watery, catching the dust motes dancing in the frigid air of the loft. It was the kind of morning that usually heralded a quiet coffee, the smell of wood smoke, and the comfortable, heavy silence of two people who no longer needed to fill the space with words. Owen lay still, staring at the rough-hewn timber of the ceiling, though his attention was entirely focused on the warm weight draped over his chest. Jasper was asleep, one heavy arm thrown across Owen's stomach, his breathing a steady, rhythmic puff of white in the cold room. Owen traced the line of Jasper's shoulder with his eyes. In his head, he was already laying out the composition. The sharp contrast of the dark hair against the pillow, the warm undertones of his skin, the ridiculous patchwork quilt pulled up to his chin. It was messy. It was uncurated. It was the most beautiful thing Owen had ever seen. He shifted slightly, intending to slip out from under the covers to stoke the dying embers in the fireplace downstairs. Jasper mumbled something unintelligible and tightened his grip, nuzzling his face into the hollow of Owen's neck. 5 more minutes, Jasper rasped, his voice rough with sleep. The cold can wait. The cold is currently winning, Owen whispered back, though he made no move to leave. He allowed himself this singular indulgence, the belief that this snow globe existence could last just a little longer. That the world outside, with its deadlines, its failures, and its relentless demand for performance, had simply ceased to exist. And then the universe corrected him. A mechanical roar shattered the morning, followed by the crunch of heavy treads on snow. It grew louder, a vibrating intrusion that rattled the single-pane windows in their frames. Then came the crowning indignity, a bullhorn screeching over the wind. "Hello in there! Sheriff Rodriguez? Open up or we're coming in through the windows. Merry Christmas!" The spell didn't just break, it evaporated. Jasper jerked awake, nearly headbutting Owen in the process. He sat up, hair wild, eyes wide. "Sheriff, it's Christmas morning." Owen felt the ice settle into his stomach, colder than the draft coming from the window. Reality had arrived, loud and uninvited, wearing a badge. He watched Jasper's face shift. The soft, sleepy vulnerability vanished, replaced instantly by the alert, capable expression of Jasper Cordova, Wilderness Guide. "Right," Jasper said, throwing off the covers and reaching for his flannel shirt. Rescue is here." He sounded relieved. Of course he was relieved. He had a family to get to, a business to save, a life that didn't involve freezing to death with an unemployed graphic designer. Owen sat up, pulling his own defenses around him as tightly as his black cashmere sweater. He reached for his glasses. The moment he slid them onto his nose, the soft focus of the morning sharpened into high-definition clarity. The cabin wasn't a cozy cocoon. It was a disaster zone of dirty laundry and ash. They weren't partners, they were two strangers trapped by a meteorological anomaly. "Better get the door," Owen said, his voice flat. He was proud of how steady it sounded. "Before he breaks it down, I think my insurance deductible is high enough." Jasper paused, one boot on, looking back at Owen. There was a question in his dark eyes, a hesitation that might have been a reach for connection. "Owen, about—" "Go!" Owen interrupted, standing up and turning his back to start folding the sleeping bag with military precision. "I need to pack. I have to be at my sister's by noon if I want to survive the appetizer round." He heard Jasper sigh, a quiet exhalation that might have been disappointment or might have just been fatigue. Then came the heavy thud of boots on the stairs. Owen closed his eyes for a second, breathing in the scent of pine and jasper before aggressively shoving his laptop into his satchel. The vacation was over. The work began now. Rebuilding the walls he'd spent 5 days letting Jasper dismantle. The transition from the cabin to the trailhead was a blur of noise and efficiency. Sheriff Rodriguez was a gregarious man who seemed to think their near-death experience was a hilarious holiday anecdote in the making. He slapped Jasper on the back, made jokes about the love shack, and hauled their gear onto the sleds towed behind the snowmobiles. Jasper rode with the sheriff. Owen rode with a deputy named Miller who chewed gum with a ferocity that suggested deep-seated rage. When they reached the plowed lot where Owen's Audi had been unceremoniously dug out, the silence returned. But this was a different kind of quiet. It was thin and brittle. Jasper hopped off the sheriff's snowmobile, his breath clouding in the crisp air. He walked over to where Owen was loading his sleek, impractical suitcase into the trunk of his car. "So," Jasper said, shoving his hands into the pockets of his parka. He looked ridiculous and wonderful, wind-battered and solid against the backdrop of white pines. "So," Owen replied. He checked the time on his phone, though he didn't actually register the numbers. "We made it." "Yeah, we did." Jasper rocked back on his heels. He looked like he was waiting for a cue. A sign. Anything. "Hey, look, I know things were intense back there. The heat of the moment, survival instincts, all that." Owen felt a sharp crack in his chest. Survival instincts. That's what they were calling it. "Absolutely," Owen said, leaning against the cold metal of his car. He channeled every ounce of his corporate persona, the one that presented quarterly losses as opportunities for growth. High-stress environments create artificial bonds. It's a well-documented psychological phenomenon. Stockholm Syndrome without the kidnapper. Jasper flinched. It was small, just a tightening around the eyes, but Owen saw it. "Right, artificial." "I appreciate you not letting me freeze," Owen continued, unlocking his car door. "And for the firewood. Good luck with the program, Jasper." I hope the resort manager goes for it. He held out his hand. It was an absurd gesture. After sharing a toothbrush, after huddling for warmth, after the way Jasper had kissed him like he was the only source of oxygen on the mountain, Owen was offering a handshake. Jasper stared at the hand. For a second, Owen thought he might ignore it and grab him. He half hoped Jasper would drag him into a cinematic embrace that would ruin his coat and fix his heart. Instead, Jasper's expression shut down. The light in his eyes dimmed, replaced by a polite, shuttered guardedness. He took Owen's hand. His grip was warm, rough, and agonizingly brief. "Drive safe, Owen," Jasper said softly. "The roads are still slick." "I have snow tires," Owen lied. He didn't. He got into the car, the leather seat freezing against his back. He started the engine, put it in gear, and didn't look in the rearview mirror until he was 2 miles down the pass. When he finally did look, the road behind him was empty, just a ribbon of gray cutting through the endless, indifferent white. Meredith's house was a sensory assault. Every surface was covered in tinsel, pine needles, or baby paraphernalia. The air was thick with the scent of cinnamon candles, roasting turkey, and the distinct milky smell of a newborn. Christmas music blared from a speaker that seemed to follow Owen from room to room. "You're late," Meredith said, barely looking up from the oven where she was basting a turkey that looked large enough to feed a small army. She was wearing a sweater that lit up, erratic blinking lights spelling out joy. "I was trapped in a blizzard," Owen pointed out, leaning against the kitchen island. He felt like a ghost. He was physically present, drinking eggnog, but his mind was 50 miles away, wondering if Jasper had gone straight to the resort or if he was with his sister. "Excuses," Meredith said, though she smiled. She wiped her hands on a towel and really looked at him. Her smile faltered. "You look terrible." "Thank you, it's the hypothermia chic. Very in the season." "No, I mean, but you look sad." She abandoned the turkey and walked over, peering at him with the terrifying perceptiveness of an older sister. "I thought the cabin was supposed to be a reset. You were going to find your creative spark or whatever." "I found a ski instructor," Owen muttered into his eggnog before he could stop himself. Meredith's eyebrows shot up. "Oh, did you now? And where is this ski instructor?" "Probably with his charming family eating something hearty and rustic while laughing joyously," Owen said bitterly. "He has great teeth and optimism. It was exhausting." "Uh-huh." Meredith snatched the glass from his hand. "Go set the table and stop checking your phone. If he hasn't texted by now, he's probably just intimidated by your terrifying intellect." "I am not terrifying," Owen protested. "Owen completely reorganized my pantry while I was in labor," Meredith called out to her husband, Dave, who was wrestling a folding table in the dining room. "He color-coded the spices." "It was chaos!" Owen shouted back. He went to the dining room and began laying out silverware. Fork, knife, spoon. Perfectly aligned, napkins folded into sharp triangles. Order, precision, control. Whatever he and Jasper had, it wasn't sustainable. Jasper needed sunshine and open spaces. Owen needed concrete and solitude. Jasper was earnest. Owen was ironic. It would have been a disaster. Owen told himself this as he adjusted a fork by 2 millimeters. It would have been a disaster, so really, he had saved them both a lot of time. Then why did everything in this warm, happy house feel so incredibly gray? "You're doing it again," Meredith said, appearing at his elbow with the baby propped on her hip. "Doing what?" "Calculated retreating. You do that thing where you decide how something is going to end before it even starts, so you can control the blast radius." She shifted the baby, who blinked at Owen with gummy solemnity. "Remember when you broke up with Phoenix because he wanted to go skydiving, and you said it was a metaphor for his lack of grounding?" "It was a metaphor," Owen insisted. "And he didn't pack his own chute. That's irresponsible." "Maybe," Meredith said gently. "Or maybe you just hate not knowing where you're going to land." Owen gripped the back of a dining chair. "He's brilliant, Mir. He has this way of looking at the world like it's a gift meant specifically for him. He wants to start an adaptive ski program for kids with disabilities. He knits. He chops wood like a lumberjack calendar model." Owen swallowed the lump in his throat. And I spent the morning treating him like a client I was firing because I was scared he'd realize I'm just boring, unemployed Owen. Meredith softened. She reached out and squeezed his arm. You're not boring, you idiot. You're steady. And you're loyal. And you have excellent taste in scarves. She tugged at the black cashmere around his neck. If he can't see that, he's blind. But if you didn't let him see it, that's on you. The doorbell rang. It was a cheerful, jarring sound that cut through the noise of the game Dave was watching in the living room. Get that, will you? Meredith asked, bouncing the baby. My hands are full of tiny human. Owen sighed. If it's another caroler, I'm not responsible for my actions. He walked down the hallway, stepping over a pile of gift wrap. He prepared his polite but firm dismissal face. He unlocked the deadbolt and pulled the door open. The polite dismissal slid right off his face. Jasper was standing on the porch. He looked completely incongruous among the plastic light-up reindeer and the suburban manicured hedges. He was still wearing his mountain gear, the thick parka, the heavy boots, the knitted scarf. His hair was windblown, his cheeks flushed dark red from the cold, and he was clutching a battered manila folder to his chest like a shield. He looked terrified. Jasper? Owen breathed. Hi, Jasper said. His voice cracked. He cleared his throat and tried again, pitching his voice lower, more professional. Hello, Owen. I apologize for the interruption on a holiday. Owen stepped out onto the porch, closing the door slightly behind him to keep the heat in, though he barely felt the cold. What are you doing here? How did you find me? I remembered you said your sister lived in Bellevue and her husband's name was Dave. Jasper said quickly, his words tumbling out. There aren't that many Daves in Bellevue. Well, actually, there are a lot, but only one with a sister named Meredith Fitzwilliam listed in the public records. Which is creepy. I know that's creepy. I'm not a stalker. I promise. Jasper? Owen said, hearing the panic rising in the other man's voice. I'm here on business, Jasper blurted out, thrusting the manila folder toward Owen. Owen blinked, looking down at the crumpled folder. Business? Yes, the program. The adaptive ski program. Jasper took a breath, trying to steady himself. He looked like he was about to give a dissertation. I realized that the proposal is missing a key element. Visual identity. Branding. You said design is about communication. About telling a story. He was rambling. Jasper never rambled. He was the calm in the storm. Seeing him this unmoored made Owen's chest ache. I need a designer, Owen, Jasper said, his eyes desperate. Someone who understands the vision. Someone who knows that it's not just about skiing, it's about freedom. And bodies moving in space. And I can't hire just anyone. It has to be you. I have a budget. It's not a big budget, mostly tips and my savings, but... Jasper, Owen said again, softer this time. And I know you're busy, Jasper plowed on, ignoring him. I know you have high-end clients and you hate noise and mess, but I thought, if it's a professional arrangement, maybe you could tolerate the chaos. I could drive down here for meetings, or we could do Zoom. Just strictly professional. He stopped, out of breath, staring at Owen with a mixture of hope and utter dread. Owen looked at the folder. Then he looked at Jasper's hands, rough, scarred, trembling slightly in the cold. He realized, with a sudden, blinding clarity, what this was. This was Jasper's armor. Just like Owen hid behind minimalism and sarcasm, Jasper was hiding behind functionality. He was offering Owen work because he didn't think he could offer himself. He was trying to be useful because he didn't believe he was enough just being Jasper. You drove 2 hours on Christmas Day, Owen said slowly, through holiday traffic, to ask for a logo? Jasper swallowed hard. He looked down at his boots. The branding is critical to the pitch, Owen. Bullshit, Owen said. Jasper's head snapped up. You didn't come here for a logo, Owen said, taking a step closer. The cold air between them felt charged, electric. You came here because the cabin wasn't artificial. Because I'm not just a work contact. Jasper's shoulders slumped, the professional facade crumbling. He let out a shaky laugh that sounded more like a sob. Yeah, okay, fine. You got me. He dragged a hand through his wind-tousled hair. I drove here because I got to my sister's house, and everyone was happy, and the food was great, and all I could think about was how much I hated that you weren't there to make fun of the napkins. He looked at Owen, defenseless. I drove here because the idea of Christmas without you was worse than the idea of you slamming the door in my face. And believe me, I was about 80% sure you were going to slam the door. Owen didn't slam the door. He dropped the pretense. He dropped the fear. He stepped forward, grabbed the lapels of Jasper's ridiculous, bulky parka, and yanked him down. The kiss was cold noses and hot breath, messy and desperate and perfect. It tasted like snow and peppermint and sheer relief. Jasper dropped the folder, papers scattering across the wet porch, and wrapped his arms around Owen, lifting him almost off his feet, crushing him against the solid warmth of his chest. When they finally broke apart, breathless, Owen rested his forehead against Jasper's. I'm expensive, Owen whispered. Jasper let out a breathless laugh, his hands running down Owen's back to keep him close. I know. I'm difficult. I have anxiety about clutter. I will critique your font choices. I'm counting on it. Jasper pulled back just enough to look him in the eye. The sunshine was back, that blinding, infectious warmth that melted Owen's cynicism like snow in July. I can handle the terrain, Owen. I'm a guide. Difficult paths are kind of my specialty. Owen smiled, and for the first time in months, it wasn't a smirk or a deflection. It was just a smile. Then you better come inside. My sister's turkey is dry, and she's threatening to make me hold the baby again. I am excellent with babies, Jasper said, grinning. And I can save a dry turkey. Show off, Owen murmured, and kissed him again, ignoring the fact that half of Jasper's business plan was currently getting soaked in a puddle of melting snow. It was fine. He could redesign it. He was going to have plenty of time. Epilogue, 3 months later. The wind at the top of Cascade Ridge cut like a knife, but the crowd gathered by the lift didn't seem to mind. There was an energy in the air, a hum of excitement that vibrated through the wooden deck of the lodge. Jasper adjusted the microphone stand, his hands shaking just a little. Not from cold, but from adrenaline. He looked out at the sea of faces, the resort manager, skeptical but watching, the parents, anxious and hopeful, the kids strapped into the new unparalleled side skis, vibrating with impatience. Welcome, Jasper's voice boomed over the speakers, clear and steady, to the first day of the Cordova Adaptive Ski Program. Cheers erupted. Jasper grinned, feeling the familiar warmth of pride in his chest. But before he continued his speech, his eyes darted to the side of the stage. 2 massive vertical banners flanked the podium. They were stunning. A stylized graphic of a mountain peak transforming into a soaring bird, rendered in a bold, impossible blue that perfectly matched the sky. The typography was clean, modern, and unmistakably professional. It looked serious. It looked like a legacy. Standing next to the left banner was Owen. He was wearing a new parka, black, naturally, but practical. He was currently in a heated discussion with the resort's marketing director, gesturing emphatically at the kerning on a brochure. He looked sharp, fierce, and entirely in his element. As if feeling the weight of Jasper's gaze, Owen stopped mid-sentence. He looked up. Behind the wire-rimmed glasses, his green eyes softened. He gave Jasper a small, private nod. You got this. Jasper took a breath, the cold mountain air filling his lungs. He finished his speech, thanked the sponsors, and signaled for the lifts to open. As the music started and the crowd surged toward the snow, Jasper hopped off the heavy wooden stage and made a beeline for his designer. The kerning is fine, Sharon, Owen was saying as Jasper approached. The negative space is what makes it legible. Hey, Jasper said, slipping a gloved hand around Owen's waist. Sharon, the marketing director, rolled her eyes, but she was smiling. Great speech, Jasper, even if your boyfriend is a typography tyrant. He's a visionary, Jasper corrected, pulling Owen closer. And the banners look incredible. They're adequate, Owen sniffed, though the tips of his ears turned pink. The printer barely got the gradient right. They watched as the first student, a young girl named Maya, sped down the beginner slope in her sit ski, her laughter ringing out across the snow. Jasper felt a lump in his throat. He had done it. They had done it. So, Owen said, leaning into Jasper's side, since the launch is officially a success, and I have technically fulfilled my contractual obligations? Technically, Jasper agreed. I was thinking we should head up to the cabin this weekend. Jasper raised an eyebrow. Oh? Getting nostalgic for freeze-dried food? I heard the plumber finally fixed the pipes, Owen said, keeping his voice low, intimate. And the insulation was replaced. I feel it is my duty as a homeowner to inspect the quality of the work. Test the structural integrity of the loft. Ensure the fireplace is efficient. Jasper laughed, a bright, joyous sound that turned heads nearby. He squeezed Owen's waist, feeling the solid reality of him through the layers of wool and down. Sounds like a serious job, Jasper said, leaning down to press a kiss to Owen's cold cheek. You're going to need a guide. Owen looked up at him, and the love in his eyes was as clear and breathtaking as the view from the summit. I know, Owen said. I found the best one.
Thank you for listening. Please subscribe, leave a comment, and review.